Yes, you have never heard of Tamika in the Bible, but one of my problems with the Word of God is that women don't have names. Most of the men have names, but you see, the culture of that day did not take the time to find out what's the sister's name. And so the Bible just says a certain woman, because the culture of that day did not count children and they did not count women. And that's why the Bible said they fed 5,000 men, not counting the children and the women. And that's why another writer says, and they fed 4,000, not counting the children and the women, because children didn't count and women didn't count. And so I want to talk about this woman today. And since nobody in that day took, none of the writers, none of the people who were around took the time to give her a name, I'm giving her a name this morning. Her name is Tamika. And it talks about this Tamika who decided that she is going to get her blessing. It is this Tamika who decided enough is enough. I'm going to get my blessing today. So I've entitled my sermon, Too Legit to Quit. Because in all of our life, as we continue to live this Christian life, we every now and then are tempted to give up. We are tempted to turn back. We are tempted to say, enough is enough, I've had enough, I just can't. The first window I find, I'm going to jump off that window. My marriage ain't working, it's over. My children don't want to behave, it's all over. My boss and my job don't want to act right, it's all over. That temptation is real to all of us. But my word to you, to quote MC Hammer, is you are too legit to quit now. What a story. Thanks, Graves, for reading that story. What a story. It's the story of a woman who was hemorrhaging for 12 long years. You must understand what it means to hemorrhage for 12 years. I think the women more understand it than the men. But here was a woman for 12 years ostracized from society because she could not stop an internal bleeding that had afflicted her for 12 years. Because of her affliction, here is a woman who had to forget her children. According to the book of Leviticus, here is a woman who could no longer live in her own house. Here is a woman, because of her malady, whose husband had forsaken her. Here is a woman who could not be seen in public during the daytime. The only time she could come out is during the night for 12 long years. Here is a woman who, when walking down the street, if she saw other people, she had to make sure that she walked on the other side because she was sick. Here is a woman for 12 long years who was a forgotten person, no name. But because of her illness, nobody wanted to come close to her until one day she said, I am too legit to quit now. What the Message translation talks about, when they began to say to Jesus, because remember the story, let me just back up a little and tell you the story. She went and she said, I know I'm not supposed to, because what a woman. She read the book. She knows that as ill as she was, she's not supposed to touch anybody. She knew very well that anybody she touched became ill. Anybody she touched became possessed with the same spirit that she was. She was not allowed to touch. If she touched anybody, she will be stoned immediately. But the brazenness in this woman, having heard about Jesus, to say enough is enough. I am willing to go out and defile that brother. I'm going to go. She knew what the book says. She knew that she was not to touch anybody. Jesus wasn't about to touch her. Come on. Jesus wasn't about to touch her. Jesus was paying her no mind. But every now and then, when nobody wants to give you a blessing, you got to get up and take your blessing when nobody wants to give it to you. Amen. Too legit to quit now. I can't quit. You know, Jesus gave 2 parables. Jesus set this up nicely. Jesus says, let me tell you a little story, Jesus says. A certain guy in the middle of the night, a friend came over to him, and he found out the friend was going to spend the night, and then he found out he had nothing to feed the friend. And he goes over to the neighbor, and he knocks on the neighbor's door, and he knows the neighbor Gerald. Neighbor Gerald has a lot of food. He goes over to neighbor Gerald, and he knocks on neighbor Gerald's door. Gerald, excuse me, I know you want to spend your time with LaShawn, but excuse me. Brother Gerald, I just need a couple of things to feed my friend. And you know Gerald, he ain't leaving LaShawn for nobody, so he ain't paying me no attention. But I keep on knocking. And I said, Gerald, please. I haven't seen this friend for 8 years. And I keep knocking. And Gerald says, LaShawn, you go open the door. LaShawn said, no, you go open the door. Gerald said, no, you go. And they stay there, but I keep on knocking. Jesus says, he keeps on knocking. He knocked and knocked. And Jesus says, because of my persistence, Gerald finally says, you know what? That boy, I'm going to get rid of him once and for all. And he goes out and he said, what do you want? And he gives me. Jesus says, remember that story. Park that story somewhere. And Jesus says, let me tell you another story. There was a certain woman who wanted justice in her life. She was wronged so often that she wanted justice. But there was a certain judge that didn't care about anybody. And this woman, she wanted justice. She had been wronged so often that she goes to the judge and she says, Judge, please, please. And because she was poor, because she had no money, Jesus says that judge paid her no attention. And Jesus says she stayed there. She stayed there. She persisted. And finally the judge broke down. And the judge said, woman, I got to get rid of you. And Jesus gave these 2 stories. And Jesus says, how much more you think your heavenly Father, when you are plagued with your problems, that if you go knocking on that door, do you not think that God will finally answer you? Don't you know that you're not too legit to quit? You are too legit to quit. That you have a claim on this God, you have a claim on the Father, you have a claim on the power of this God to release you and to bring relief into your life. That's the God that you serve. So there is a sense in which you are legitimately a part of who God is. And so this woman says, I'm going to this man. Understand what, We say that women are not supposed to wear pants and, men are not supposed to wear skirts and all this kind of stuff. But I kind of like how they dressed in Jesus' day. Jesus was called Rabbi, which is a particular priest. It's a teacher. He's a teacher. He's a professor of the law. He knew the Talmud. He knew the Torah. He knew everything. That's what he studied from childhood. And this is the way the rabbis dressed. All the rabbis would have a long pants and the pants that they had on, and everywhere they went, it's like a pajama. It's like a pajama, and they wherever they went, they slept in the pajama, and they walked around in the pajama. They all had that. And then over that, they had what is called the prayer cloth. And they'll put a prayer cloth over that, and the prayer cloth reached about the knees. And then above that, they will have another outfit. And it is this you have to appreciate the story, because it is this particular outfit that rabbis, so they had 3 outfits. And it is this particular outfit. At the bottom of the outfit were what you call tassels. Little tassels. That's what you call it, Gene, the little thing that they put in the curtains or whatever you get. Stacey, what you call it? You the seamstress? Tassels. That's, I think, is what you call it. The little tassels that they hang at the bottom. And there were 613 of them. Every rabbi, he would walk the streets, and there were 613 of those little tassels down at the bottom, and you can see them swinging. And here is this woman, hearing that the rabbi is coming, knowing that she's not supposed to touch the rabbi, but she takes a gamble. She takes a gamble that maybe if I could touch just one of those 613 tassels, maybe, just, boy, what a chance. I don't have to touch all of them. As a matter of fact, I don't have to touch him. Because Jesus was going about touching people, and they were healed. But here's a woman who turned, you talk about the upside down kingdom. Here's a woman who says, you don't even have to touch me. My gosh, what kind of faith is that? No wonder Jesus says, I haven't found so much faith. My apostles don't have the kind of faith that you have. And she says, you don't have to touch me. You don't have to touch me. As a matter of fact, I don't even want to see you. I don't even want to see your face. She's already on the ground. She's already groveling. She's already where society says she ought to be. And she says, just one of those 613 tassels, I know I will be healed, even though you don't want to, because Jesus wasn't paying her no mind. As a matter of fact, Jesus was on his way to touch somebody, Jairus' daughter, because a leader, not even a Jew, and Jesus was going outside of the realm of his own ministry. He got word that Jairus' daughter was ill, and he was on his way to touch. He says, I'm going over there because they said, if you come to our home, if you come to Jairus' home, maybe you can touch his daughter. So he was on his way to touch. He would not even touch this woman. And this woman saw Jesus, and she says, he's on his way to touch. I'm going to do some touching here today. On his way to touch, not even thinking about touching her. But she turns it around, and she says, I don't care what the book says. That's sometimes you have to say that, you know. That's the kind of faith. When you're real legit. Oh, I forgot. I got to tell you some stuff. I want to tell you 4 things. About being legitimate. You all doing all right? Up here? All right. Don't need no. You all right? All right. Let me tell you 4 things about being legitimate, because you have to be legitimate to be able to claim the blessings of God. So in order to be too legit to quit, let me just tell you 4 things. First of all, it might be 3. Yeah, 3. So it's a shorter sermon. In order to be legitimate, you must be willing to forget the past. Hello. In order to be legitimate, in order to lay claim upon who God is, you must be willing to forget your past. You got to be willing to forget yesterday. Because that's the paralysis that most of us suffer with. This because of what happened yesterday. But, she could have looked at yesterday. She could have said, yesterday they said that I was dirty. Yesterday they said I can't be in the crowd. Yesterday they said I was ostracized. Yesterday they said I was a nobody. Yesterday, and she on that day had to forget yesterday in order to become legitimate. Yesterday is hard. Yesterday is hard. It's hard to forget yesterday. I'm on your street, Brenda Lee. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to forget yesterday. I know. Some people hurt you so bad that you can't forget yesterday. I know that. David had a few words for those kind of folk, and David used to pray, I wish the tongue stick to the top of the roof of their mouth. And every now and then I feel like imprecatory prayers, or sometimes I feel like bringing them prayers out. Maria, I like them prayers. Get a little candle. Where's Cynthia? There are some people that hurt you so badly. But saints, let me just tell you, you cannot be legitimate. You cannot make claim on what God has for you tomorrow if you are not willing to forget yesterday. Don't let yesterday haunt you. Don't let yesterday paralyze you. Don't get, when everybody calls you everything but a child of God, don't let yesterday prevent you from laying claim on the blessings that God has for you today, because you will never be able to deal with tomorrow if you're yesterday. Too legit to quit. But you cannot be legit if you are not willing to forget yesterday. Oh, you don't know my mother. I am what I am today because you don't know my mother. She left scars on me. You don't know that job I was on for 8 years. I am what I am because that job you got to forget yesterday. It's this old car that got me coming in here crank. Oh man, I forgot you here. That got me coming in here all cranky is because you don't know I was coming down the highway. It's that old car that I'm driving. That's why I'm cranky today. You got to forget yesterday if you're going to lay claim on the blessings of today. Forget it. Don't be paralyzed by yesterday. To be legit, we have got to forget yesterday. Secondly, in order to be legitimate, we've got to begin to embrace, make sure you write this down, Trio. We've got to embrace the purposes of God. You see, God has a plan for your life. God has a plan for your life. You are not an accident. In my early days, I used to think I was an accident. My parents had 4 children, and I wasn't too sure whether I was supposed to be here. They had 6. And 2 died before they saw their second birthday. And for a while there, I never thought I was for real. I didn't know whether I was supposed to be one of them too. You know. And when you have that kind of traumatic early experience, you're wondering, well, and your parents, my mother used to say, well, you know, I had 6 children and you 4, that's all that's left. And I'm thinking, boy, it could have been me. I could have been one of them. Is it by accident? But somewhere along the line, I met Jesus. And when I met Jesus, I understood quite well that God has a purpose for my life. My life was turned around because I understood that God's revelation gave to me the purposes of God, and now I'm living according to what God has in store, the purpose. That's what makes you legitimate. When you understand it's not the whimsical plan of God or activity of God. No, there is a design for your life. And boy, your life gets turned around when you understand that this is the design that God has. There is a purpose, and you become legitimate when you understand that there is a purpose that God has for you. Boy, you can live, you can face tomorrow. Cassandra, that's right, you can face tomorrow. You can face tomorrow when you know, oh, I'm in the plan of God. God is still in control. And so that when we are going in the boat across the river, as we talked about, to understand that God is still in control. We have trouble with that. I put on Facebook a picture I saw with 2 black women, pilot and co-pilot in a plane. Boy, that was so refreshing. And I said, it is the first unmanned plane with these 2 black women, pilot and co-pilot, flying through the skies. And I said, that's it. We are there. We have gotten there. Even though whenever I get in a plane, I always look, you know, when I'm walking by, I always look to see who is in the pilot seat. I've never been in a plane with 2 women, pilot and co-pilot, but I often wonder, what would my attitude be? And don't judge me, because you the same thing. I wonder what my attitude will be if I look over there and I see 2 women. Maybe if it's a flight going from Trinidad and Tobago, it's all right. But what if the flight is going from Kennedy Airport to London? Am I really willing to trust 2 women? Come on, look inside of you. Look inside. Don't look at me. Look inside of you. You're the one with the problem. Is God in charge of our life? Is God in charge of the flight we are on? Because you cannot be legit until you get to the place where you understand quite well, is he in charge? If he's in charge, you legit. And thirdly, so first of all, you become legitimate by forgetting the past. Secondly, you become legitimate by embracing the purposes of God. And thirdly, you become legitimate by taking risks. Yeah, you got to take that risk. There was this woman, she was willing to take the risk because the foundation is already built. You have forgotten the past. You understand quite well the purposes of God, that you are included in the purpose of God. Well, then, Brother Jackson, you ain't got a choice. Now you know the purposes of God. Now you've forgotten the past. Then do the other right thing. Take the risk, take the chance, and step out there on the promises of the Almighty God. That's where she was, Brother Jackson. That's where she was. She says, man, everybody said I'm sick. You know, I understand quite well that God, I've heard about this Jesus. She knew about the promises. She knew about the Old Testament, all that they talked about this Messiah who would come with healing in his wings. She read about it. And for 9 years, she had been suffering. And then in the short 3-year ministry that Jesus had, and often she would wonder, am I ever going to see him? 3 years he had here in his ministry. And she had lived 9 years suffering, and she's like, where is he? Is he in Jericho? Is he in Capernaum? Is he in Bethlehem? Is he in Nazareth? Where is he? And then her day finally came. And what a risk she took. And I tell you why it was a risk. Because when she began to approach Jesus, she could have been stopped by any one of the apostles. Here is a woman with an issue of blood. Everybody knows that she is ill. Everybody knows that she should not be there. And they know, yes, Tamika. That's her. That's her. But she was willing to take the risk to say, I might never get there. I might be found out even before I get there. But it's a risk that I'm willing to take because I'm legitimate. You can lay on legitimate claims on the goodness of God and the faithfulness of God because you are willing to take the risk. And let me ask you, brother, sister, are you willing to take the risk to get the blessings of God? And the risk that I am willing to take, the risk that I'm always willing to take, that I'm willing to forget yesterday even when others around me don't want to forget yesterday. Come on, somebody. That's a risk. When you take that risk, your feelings get hurt. When you take that risk, everybody call you a wimp. But there is something about this Christian life. There is something about living for God that should strengthen us to be able to lay claim on the promises of God as Tamika did. Tamika says, they might stop me before I get there, but that's a risk I'm willing to take. Amen. It's a risk I'm willing to take. If I can touch just one of those tassels, just one, 613 of them, but I'm going to take that risk. I don't know how many of you looked at Serena Williams this week. What a tremendous story of a woman who decided that she is too legit to quit. And at what, 33? Still out there trying to break every record. And they are called, and by the way, they are calling her all kinds of names. All of a sudden, the whole sports world began to believe in evolution. But yet she persists because she is too legit to quit. Some years ago, most of you went around with Wilma Rudolph, who everybody said she would never walk and she would never make it, but yet lived because she felt that she was too legit to quit, to live, to go to the Olympics and to win 4 gold medals in one Olympic. Let me just say to you, I don't know what you're going through in your life. But may I tell you, that the same God who has called you is the same God who will see you through? May I tell you that the same God who saved you is the same God who will not neglect you? May I tell you, that's the same God that you know 5 years ago. God is immutable and unchangeable. This God you can count on to be there when you expect him or her to be there. This God. This is the God that God says you can count on my promises. I am Alpha and Omega. I'm the beginning and the end. I was there at the beginning and I will be there at the end. This is the God that tells you you are too legit to quit. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you are trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile, but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns. And many a fellow turns about when he might have won had he stuck it out. Don't give up. Though the pace seems slow, you may succeed with another blow. Often, the goal is nearer than it seems to a faint and faltering man. Often, the struggler has given up when he might have captured the victor's cup. And he learned too late, when the night came down, how close he was to the golden crown. Success is failure turned inside out. The silver tint in the clouds of doubt. And you never can tell how close you are. It might be near when it seems afar. So stick to the fight. When your heart is hit, it's when things seems worse that you must not quit. The legend says that the rich king took a big stone, really large stone, and placed it on a pathway and looked to see what people will do as they came by. And person after person came by and saw this big boulder, and they went around it and kept on going until this one person came by. I said, wow, it's in everybody's way. And this one stranger moved the boulder away. When he moved the boulder, he found an envelope below the boulder. The note with millions of dollars left by the king. This is for the person who has the courage not to go around, but to move it so that other people can make it. And maybe that's what you need to do. to understand that you are too legit to quit. Move that boulder. Don't walk around it. Move it. Somebody else will help you to move it. There are other saints who will help. Don't think that you have to move that boulder. And as a matter of fact, whenever you think that nobody else wants to help you move the boulder, the good thing about it is there is your God who will help you to move that boulder. Get a hold of it and move it. God will be with you, Tamika. God is with you. God will help you move that boulder. You're too legit to quit. MC Hammer was right. You're too legit to quit. MC Hammer, chapter 4, verse 23. What are we going to say?